Hello, my name is Tom. I'm from the Netherlands, and I believe that over the last years I founded about 11 companies, 11 startups. And over the years I learned that strategy is a major element in the choice of your technology stack. Marketing and technologies are the main two drivers in your choices. And we need to think about the future. So what is it about? The interesting thing is that very often it is not that hard to predict the future, but the timing when things are happening, that is the biggest challenge. And I can argue that in normal life, but especially in companies, you need some kind of strategy to help you to guide making choices. And that goes from one person company to a company with thousands and thousands of people. There's no difference. I worked in startups alone, several of them, and I've also been responsible for strategic marketing in a company of 12,000 people. And we had a marketing team of 70 people. It was the same. You need a strategy. I want to give a very simple example, an example we all know. Think about a car. Think about Volvo as a brand. In the 1980s, Volvo decided they needed a new company strategy. And they chose just one word: safety. It was not a plan. It was not an action. It was just a concept which would give them throughout the company a start point for decisions. Business choices, resource planning, technical choices, software choices, which we come later. The point, however, is that strategy is not static because things change. When you look at Volvo, they had safety as their choice, but then suddenly all the cars became safe. So we came in the 1980s, 1990s, and the 2000s, and they all had this NCAP test results. Cars became safe, Renault was safe, Mercedes was safe. So what do? Right? You have to move forward. You have to find a new strategy. Safety didn't do it anymore for Volvo. What did they have? And there are two little pictures at the bottom. And the first one is so tempting. We do safety today, and tomorrow we do something else, because now we have this time. So you jump from one island to the other, right? So you can say, listen, today we do safety, and tomorrow we have the best or the fastest car. But it doesn't make sense if you can't connect these two worlds. So strategy is not only related to concepts, but over time these concepts should match. And that's why this picture is much better. You have a concept, a strategy, and based on that you expand it into a direction you want to go. So what did Volvo do? They said, listen, we had safety, and now we talk about family. Safety didn't do it anymore, our cars are safe, but with our car, we offer something which is related to family life. And that relates to all choices in the company. A very nice example of strategic choices. Strategy is not planning. Some people are talking about a strategic plan. I can argue a strategic plan doesn't exist. Because a plan you can write on a spreadsheet. You can say, okay, these are the steps. You can have a Trello board. You can control costs of a plan. We plan to build a factory and I know how much it will cost. Or I plan to buy some software and I know how much it will do. It's a comfortable choice, and a lot of managers usually like to choose planning tools or write these planning papers and go for something. It's not what helps. That doesn't help us for our technology choices and our software choices. When you think about strategy and the choices you make, you think about actual customers. Not your own bottom line, which you control, actual customers, and you don't control them. They make their own choices, right? So for a plan, I know how much it's going to cost, more or less. But for a strategy, I don't know how much it's going to bring me. right? Volvo never knew that if they had safety as the primary strategy, that it would bring them so much money. No. A plan can be can be huge. It can be 10 pages, 20 pages. The reality is a good strategy fits on one page. If it doesn't fit on a page, it's probably not. It's probably a strategic plan, and a strategic plan doesn't bring you anywhere. So it's scary because there's no proof of success in a strategy. But there is an aim. This is where we want to go. And we align all our choices to that. Now, if you know where you want to go, if I know that I work at Volvo and safety is my strategy, then it suddenly can help me to go back and think, what do I need to pack in my backpack, right? To go where I want to go. If my strategy is mountain climb, if my strategy is to go to a top of a mountain, I can think what to pack in my bag, right? Or if I go sailing, I will probably have something else. Based on this strategy, you can turn the choices in each department of the company, including software, and keep every choice related to the expected outcome. It's the main thing which I always realized in all these startups I did is that we need to stay in charge of our own destiny because the world is changing, and the beautiful framework of today and the high quality people who are jumping on it and putting a lot of energy on it and a lot of buzz is that the same atmosphere and the same driving force you have in a year or in 2 years or 3 years? Or do you think your company will only last half a year? Right? So it's not only that you need to find the tools in your backpack when you go on the journey that need to do the job today, but also in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, because you will keep carrying it. How many times did you go to a company where they still had ancient technology? COBOL, remember that? Maybe most of you don't. Well, I believe even PHP today is becoming ancient sometimes, right? So, but it's there, it's in the companies, you don't get rid of it. So with the choices you have today, they will influence tomorrow. And you can think as a developer, I work on it 1 or 2 years and then I move away. No, life isn't that simple. You make your choices and you have to live on it for a longer term. What I like to go through when we choose our technology stacks, we make first choices on the layers. Because, you have to, it's a beast, and how you tackle it. Well, the first thing is let's agree on some layers, and I'll go through that later. I'll go through all of them later. In fact, let's just jump on it and go through the first one. The layers. Well, it's a bit like the picture we just saw. This is a sort of layer system I like to agree everybody in the company on, and it's an easy one, I think, these days. We have front-end framework, middleware, back-end database, 1 or 2 other things, maybe more, but that's about it. So we already compartment it. We say, listen, we have these layers, and in each of these layers we're going to make the choices. And of course they have to integrate, but these are basically the discussion points. But just as important at the same time are the soft tools, as I call them, that support our core technology. Because without all these things that the rest of the company also need, from presentation tools to design tools to testing or whatever, you need them both. And so this layering of what we need to pack in our backpack, the choices we have in our tech stack, also relate to the soft choices. Another thing is, the next step is, how big are our services going to be? So we choose something, let's say in the back end, right? Is it just one application? Are we going to compartment it? Microservices, which is hot now, but by the way, it was also hot 30 years ago, so don't know what happened in between. And it's a challenge, because on one hand you say, when we have like our microservices, oh, it's so nice, you have an API and you program here something, program there, and you define what's going on, and it's nice. But your number of microservices can increase, so your intercommunication. And the first thing you probably do is that you have your Docker containers, and you can have some Kubernetes to control them. Yeah, but you're developing band-aids for a problem you introduced in the first place. Is that with microservices, the other end of the scale is that you've got so much intercommunication going on that you need all kind of super management tools to control that again. Okay, so that's what we do. We're going to say, listen, we have layered. Within the layer, we're going to choose on a certain level of microservices, and we feel comfortable with that. We stick with that. The databases. I have not seen a company these days which does not require a huge amount of flexibility after the initial design. And the number of times I've seen SQL databases and the relational structures change and change and change, and then importing again, it can be a nightmare, especially if you've got a running company with lots of clients and lots of transactions going on. Changing databases on the fly, it's expensive. Let's pull the money out of it. So the more flexibility you can put in the pattern in the beginning, the better. Plus, don't be afraid too much about performance, what I realized. So often we had a startup or a company where you say, listen, but we need, Postgres or whatever we had, because the number of transactions, and we had with this per-minute, tests, benchmarks, and 1 microsecond, and no, we don't get there. Flexibility when choosing the tech stack is huge, what I learned. So recently we're quite fond of Mongo, just because of flexibility, although that also gives all kind of destructuring problems later on. Anyway, it's one of the other things which goes into that. But the main point for databases is don't worry so much about performances, is what I learned over the years. You'll come to that later. One of the main things in choosing technology, in my opinion, is the ownership. If you want to stay in charge of your own destiny, then whatever tools you choose should be tools where you feel that it won't change the outcome of your company if things change on that end. It's a hard one. Quick overview between the two, closed source versus open source. Closed source payments are involved, obviously. There's a service level agreement. That can happen with open source as well. Closed source generally have like a complete ecosystem, where you have certified programmers and they can go on training courses and they come back with huge, can happen there as well, but it's a bit more present in closed source. There's one big issue I found, is the more successful your company is, the bigger they are, the more lobbyists are coming from the closed source. And the companies have a lot of money, so they have a lot of lobbying power. They won't come to the developer so often, they probably go to management. They speak the language of management. So this discussion, the choices between your tech stack when it comes to closed source versus open source are polluted by the lobbying power of certain suppliers. You have to bear that in mind, because if you think you make an objective choice, but at the same time you know that your whole process is involved by lobbyists and who change this approach, then at least be aware. So one very important element is the licenses. I've seen quite a few mistakes there. I remember once we chose a chat app for our own company, and we chose Mattermost. I don't know if you heard of it. It's a WhatsApp, but then, you know, very nice. But the licenses sucked. You know, it seemed open source and they seemed so nice, and maybe they are, I don't know the people, but if you could go back and you check exactly what the license allowed, you were screwed. Okay, so it didn't help. What I really like in the choices for open source is if there's one or two, but usually it's just one guy, girl, who is really in charge and completely, it's a guru. We need a guru. A guru as a leader, it's to be strong, but for me, they also need to be nice. So what I really do is I watch YouTubes of the people. If I feel good, and I did it with Vue.js, we chose Vue.js in quite a few projects, and I never heard of it, you know, like 5 years ago, what was it? And I started looking videos of Avenue, which is the founder of Vue. And it was just a nice guy. He's smart. I got it, you know. So that's one thing you do. It needs a strong vision. And you also be receptive. Try to send a few messages on a GitHub issue and see if they respond and how they respond. Do they have some patience? We once had almost a choice for Firebase as our backend database. We didn't do it, and I was so glad afterwards that we didn't, because it was bought by Google. And you know what happens when one of the big five, I call them the evil five, if they buy into your world? You know, they're so big, and the thing you are dedicating your life to is so small in relation to their goals that they couldn't care less. So they bought it, they put it somewhere, they poured it around, they put some stuff on it, and suddenly, you know, all the big, you know, emotion we had with Firebase in the beginning was gone. So I personally try to avoid any open, even if it's called open source, any technology where one of the, I call them the evil five, are really influencing that world. If they own the licenses on this open source technology, think again, because you are so small with your little framework compared to their goals that, you know, there's no CEO which even sleeps one night less when they say, oh, you know, Angular, Google did Angular, right? Well, let's not do it anymore. Oh, you know, who are you going to call, right? And you can say, listen, I take it out and I fork it and all this. You know, but that's not what you're looking for when you are choosing your stack. You know, you want quietness and good progress. So, I do like medium-sized companies which support some kind of open source. If they have proper licenses and a good leader, you know, you can get away with it. One thing I try to avoid is stacking dependencies on dependencies, because it's so tempting to choose a certain, you know, like for example, like Remix, right? But Remix relies on React, and React relies on, you know, was it Facebook still? You go from one dependency to the other, and you can even see in your technology, if you import it, how many dependencies do they take along, and how much dependencies do the dependencies take along? So you have this nice little library, and it works great when it works, but if they're 2 levels deep of dependencies on your nice little front-end library or whatever, or your framework, you know, how does it stick over time? Today it works. Tomorrow all the gurus are left because they're running after something else, and where are you left with your company? Of course, when you're a developer, you can say, listen, I don't care, I just go running with them. Yeah, but you know, I'm running a company, so I try to stay alive, right? Yeah, one more. Issues. I once made a mistake 3 years ago, how recent, to go for Vuetify, like a front-end set of components to make life easier, I thought, and it was. But what I should have done is give more weight to the number of issues. They had like over 1,000 open issues in Goethe. That is bad. And even though this thing worked great, what I didn't realize at that time is that 1,000 issues are carried along when they version change. And Vue 5 was dependent on Vue 2, Vue 2 went to Vue 3, and Vue 5 fell off the wagon. They couldn't cope because their legacy issue was too big. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind as well. Flexibility. Please realize that whatever you do, if it's a startup or any other company, it's always, as I learned, 2 steps forward, 1 backward. I have never seen it different. It's never that you don't have iterations. You reinvent the wheel over and over again because your clients move, your things don't change, things change. And the presentation of your tool needs to be that you can communicate clearly. You make something, it looks nice, it works, but make sure that under that you have a kind of mechanism that you can cope for continuous change, so that you're not stuck to a certain choice. Then the last thing, and I'll need a little bit more time for this one, is human resources, people. What about people? If you hire developers, how difficult is it to find the good ones? And I've been living in a world where, for example, we have these promises. Artificial intelligence, a huge impact, it's the thing to go. And blockchain, new future, we also heard it so often. Object-oriented program, we have these terms and they try to get you in their world, in your company with these things. By the way, all these 3 lines are lines I personally said, my own quotes, from 30 years ago. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, we could have said it yesterday, right? Artificial intelligence, blockchain, and it's 30, I'm not lying, it's 30-year-old words, exactly these, no difference. So if you are trying to get people in your company with this kind of claims, they're a bit thin, aren't they? Right? So what is it? Why do you want to work for a company, and how do you get the best people? Well, in my opinion, there are 2 ways. One is that you can say we can go niche. We do something, some graphical library for climate predictions, and it's like this world, this and this and this, and then we have like 100 researchers on the world, and that's our pool for this task, for this development. Okay, but you can also do different and say, listen, no, I allow myself a tech stack which is flexible, where I can change, where I can make these iterations, where I can feel comfortable that I'm in charge of my destiny. But I attract the best people because we show leadership, because we have a strategy. I want to program software for Volvo because I believe in keeping my family safe. That's nice. I dig that, And there are many more things which I believe that at the end of the day, people like to work for companies that show a direction where you feel that you want to be part of. It's extremely important that you offer yourself in any company, in any department, freelance or huge companies, that you offer yourself a flow. And the flow consists on day by day, every day an achievement. What did we do today? How do we move forward? And I get it when people say, there's a huge difference by following somebody who shows, a leader with a strategy, versus a manager who pushes. There's a big difference. In my opinion, you get the best people by offering them a good, pool of resources, this tech stack, these choices, but at the same time leadership. So if you make choices in your tech stack, there's a lot related to leadership. Where do you want to go and how can we point it? But there's also responsibility on the floor. You also have a responsibility to communicate. If you worked like a week on a beautiful component which makes sorting routine 5% faster, that could be huge, right? It's like 5% less energy. I mean, who couldn't be? But if you say that to somebody, I made my sorting 5% faster. Nice. Next. They miss the context. So if you are in development, if you are working in technology, you do have a responsibility to communicate back to the choices we made. So think about where you came from, think of the choices and communicate so that the reward of your achievements are better perceived. There's a good example I had with, I was in a discussion with a manager in a company. It was a company of, I believe, 450 people, and they had, it was a hospital actually, small clinic, and he complained about system managers. They said they were difficult to get, and I said, because, I said, how many times did you call your system manager when things were right? Or how many times did you call them that you had a blue screen, or a problem, or a network access? And the reality is, he had to admit that he only talked, just like most people in the company, with the system manager when things broke down. This what happened is the system managers, they develop an iron skin, right? Because they only get complaints. So the phone rings and there's a complaint. So that's one thing they do. And the second thing they do is they avoid changes. They want to stick to what works, and everything else they fight like the plague. I don't want that in my company. But how do we prevent it? We prevent it by making sure that the system managers are rewarded when things go right, when there are achievements. Because if we don't, they screw our tech stack. Because they put us down on the world to what they know today. They will fight every change with whatever strategy and tactic they might have. And we don't want it, because then the tech stack becomes static. And what I really wanted to tell you today, your choice in technology, they should be dynamic. You should be in charge over time. And the only way to do that is accepting these iterations from your own work and everybody else, from users and from your colleagues. That's the story today. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's a bit different than the last one.